Tony? All good, thank you.
Introduce the other board members in just a minute. Mindy, can you please begin by providing instructions for members of the public that plan to participate in today's meeting?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mindy Maxwell, and I'm the clerk of the board. I will provide some information on how public participation will be organized for today's meeting. If you wish to make a verbal comment on one of the board items, or if you want to make a comment during public forum, you must be in person, using Zoom webinar, or calling in by phone. If you are currently watching the webcast on YouTube but wish to comment, please email agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov and request the registration link. I will respond to the email with the link. Once the registration form is submitted, you will automatically receive the Zoom link via email. If you are on the Zoom webinar and wish to speak but have not registered, please virtually raise your hand and you will be called upon after registered participants have spoken. If you are using a computer or tablet, please click the raise hand button. If you are calling in on the telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand. If you want to speak and do not raise your hand, your chance to speak could be missed. If you are in person at the meeting and wish to speak, please fill out a blue card at the registration table and provide it to the staff person. Staff will call each commenter by name and then unmute your microphone. For those calling into the meeting via telephone, staff will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. For the record, please state your name and who you are representing before you speak. This is especially important for those calling in to testify in an item. A 3-minute timer will be used. You will hear a bell when the 3 minutes are up. Additional time could be granted at the discretion of the board chair. Please speak from a quiet location to avoid background interference. I would also like to give a friendly reminder to our board members, presenters, and staff to please mute yourself when you are not speaking to avoid background noise. Thank you.
Thanks, Mindy. I'll now introduce the other board members as follows. I have Nick Ovdis from Sacramento. Denise Cadera from Allensworth is participating remotely. Elena Lee Reeder of Sacramento. Sean Yang, also of Sacramento. Art Baggett from El Portal, also participating remotely today. And again, I'm Mark Bradford of Sacramento. Nicole Morgan, State Water Board member, is participating in this meeting and will provide an update a little later. I'll now introduce our Executive Officer, Patrick Palupa, who will introduce his staff. But before that, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, Chair Bradford, members of the board. We have immediately across from me, Kennedy Knight, attorney with the Office of Chief Counsel. Chris Moskal, another attorney with the Office of Chief Counsel, is participating remotely. In front of me, we have JJ Baum, Assistant Executive Officer in the Rancho Cordova office. To my immediate right, Jessica Yar, Senior Staff Counsel with the Office of Chief Counsel. To my far left is Adam Lapitz, Assistant Executive Officer in the Rancho Cordova office, and Mindy Maxwell, Executive Assistant and Clerk to the board, is to my immediate left. Clint Snyder is also in the audience, Assistant Executive Officer of the Reading office, and Christina Shoup is also in the audience, Assistant Executive Officer in the Fresno office. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Bradford.
Thanks, Patrick. Board member communications. Are there any communications from board members since the last meeting? You want to go? I don't want to.
Hi, yesterday, October 17th, I attended the Sulphur Bank Mercury Tour with US EPA, Cal EPA, TTSC, State Water Board, and the Elam Indian Colony.
Yes, I have one. I met on October 1st with the NECWA folks in the Pitt River watershed. We met MacArthur with regional board staff to discuss ILRP issues.
Okay, Denise, are you there? Okay, while waiting for Denise, I've only had a few internal calls, so I won't go into all those. Couple of interesting topics though covered at those were, involving the state budget shortfall, which is going to be an evolving situation. And the dairy general order, which was issued on October 1st, and we're going to be talking about that quite a bit later today in closed session and then at future board meetings, I'm sure. So that's all I had. And not hearing anything on the other end. Okay.
I saw a little notification that came up on the screen.
Oh, yeah. So Denise, I see you have your hand raised.
Denise, you should be able to talk.
Wow.
Sorry for the delay.
There you go. Good morning, everybody. I'm always the challenge one with the computer glitches, but my board communication for today, it's the 5th of September, Allensworth hosted a USDA Equity Commission session in Allensworth. We also hosted a California Air Resources Board Zero Emissions Space and Water Heaters Standards Listening Session here in Allensworth. Also, representatives from Allensworth went to Washington, D.C. on the 24th of September through the 26th to participate in the USDA Rural Development Equity Convening Session. We met briefly with the Secretary of Vilsack and sat on a panel to discuss how to move projects forward. And Allensworth actually received some funding from USDA Rural Development for a couple of our projects here in the community. I also joined the board briefing session for the 11th of October. And finally, Allensworth continues to struggle with our water issues. We've had our water off and on every other day. It just happens. The fuse burns out, the motor burns out. So in the evening at 5 o'clock when families are getting home and getting ready to have dinner, no water. So it's been a serious crisis for Allensworth. We're working with the State Water Board and actually working on a limited administrative capacity to address many of these issues. But as I serve on the board, I'm also a resident in an underserved community that has water challenges. It's ongoing, it's frustrating, it's a difficult experience, but I'm being optimistic and hopeful that we have some favorable results coming forward soon. That's my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. And I think that's it for communications from board members. It's time for the State Water Board Liaison update, and State Board Member Nicole Morgan is here to provide that update. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. Okay, there we go. Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. It's great to be here this morning to provide you with the liaison report. Also want to thank Board Member Kadar for keeping us up to date on what is occurring in Allensworth so that we can continue to support Allensworth as we can and to make sure that we are continuing to work with Stantec to make sure that Stantec is providing adequate support to the community and also that our staff are staying on top of the ongoing issues there. So a report for this board meeting. So water conservation, I just want to give you a quick update on where we are there. On July 3rd, the State Board approved a nation-leading regulation that will promote more efficient water use by large water utilities across California. On September 30th, 2024, the Office of Administrative Law approved it. So we'll go into effect on January 1st. The regulation applies to the state's largest water utilities, urban retail water suppliers, which serve 95% of California residents. SGMA. So during the September 17th State Board hearing, the board placed the overdrafted Tule groundwater subbasin in probationary status under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, also known as SGMA. Two groundwater sustainability agencies, also known as GSAs, Delano Early Mart and Kern Tulare, were exempted from paying fees and reporting. We also added to the resolution that the executive director can also exempt other GSAs that submit additional evidence showing that they are also improving their plans to show that they're also sustainable, to also exempt them from paying fees and reporting. So we're looking to see, there look like there may have been two that were close to that goal. So we're looking to see if they can update their plans to show that progress. The Delta Conveyance Project, yesterday, the State Board, so there on September 17th, there was a staff issue, the notice of pre-hearing conference in preparation for yesterday's pre-hearing conference. So sorry, both of these are 17th, and so they're really playing with my brain at the moment. So on September 17th, they issued the notice and then yesterday, on October 17th, they held the pre-hearing conference. So the hearing officer heard arguments in preparation heard arguments yesterday from parties about legal and policy issues raised by DWR's August 23rd request and withdrawal of its petitions for extension of time. The hearing officer intends to issue an amended notice of hearing or procedural ruling after yesterday's conference. Please note that ex parte rules do apply to this item. So the Sites Project Authority, the State Board conducted a site visit connection to the Sites Project Authority hearings on September 9th and 10th. The AHO issued an amended hearing notice providing new hearing dates on Friday, September 27th. More details can be found on their program webpage. Please note the ex parte rules also apply to this item. So the wastewater needs assessment. So we held the first advisory group meeting here at your offices. Thank you for hosting it. The State Board will be holding the second meeting on October 25th via Zoom. The purpose of this meeting will be to present, review, and seek input on the qualitative assessment of the wastewater conditions in California, data collection efforts that inform also the quantitative assessment. And so also want to, thank your staff for working with ours. There has been a big effort to really do a lot of data mining to see what data do we have, where the systems are, what data gaps are there, and really drill down of where there's domestic systems throughout the state, and then to verify that information to understand, do we have the right set of information and pull the data from different databases. And so the advisory group, there's about 30 participants, wide range of participants, which is just really great to have to help us to really just understand what those needs are, from technical to those that are in communities. It also academia, to really see where do we need to go. Just about almost 2 years now, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, and a lot of the systems were put in place about 50 years, if not more. And now there's a lot of improvements that need to be had. We've made large improvements and have been making strides on larger facilities that discharge primarily to surface water. However, we have a lot of systems, particularly here in the Central Valley, that discharge to land or are on septic systems and are also in need of great improvements. Some of these systems, we have discussed previously that some systems, they are well maintained in certain areas, and certain counties are really on top of it. There's other areas and counties that may not be as on top of the systems, and these systems can be and are impacting groundwater and drinking water supplies. So it is very important for us to understand where these systems are, what these needs are, and really to move forward on addressing these wastewater needs throughout the state. And so I want to thank you all for your support and Christina's support on being one of the executive sponsors of this effort. And so there's been a little while since I've given an update on the California Water Supply Strategy and Implementation Strategy. So just wanted to give a couple of updates there. So there's several actions. And so just as a refresher, the water supply strategy outlines California's strategy and priority actions to adapt and protect water supplies based on new data and accelerated climate change to ensure California has new water needed for generations to come. This strategy outlines 4 sets of actions, and the state will pursue sets targets and identify specific implementation steps to prepare California for its new climate reality. The following is an update on the milestones and implementation steps since my last update. So on recycled water, there is a goal to reuse at least 800,000 acre feet per year by 2030 and 1.8 million acre feet by 2040, with most of the additional recycling involving direct wastewater discharges that are now going to the ocean. Staff is preparing to present an information item before the state board on November 5th to share the results of the 2023 volumetric report of wastewater and recycled water in California. Staff will share statewide progress towards the water supply strategy goals and highlight emerging relationships between statewide precipitation trends and recycled water use. So just want to note that, so looking at recycled water, and then there's also goals on desalination. A lot of the goals on, when you look at it on the surface, it may seem that there's a large focus on just ocean desal, but there's also a focus that is looking at brackish water desalination. So just wanted to share both of those with you. And I'm here if there's any questions.
Well, you guys have been busy. So thank you for that update. A lot going on, obviously. Any questions from the board?
I just had a comment, Chair, and it's regarding the wastewater needs assessment. I'm curious as far as the needs assessment, that's where we are at this stage, but any opportunities to delve into from this need assessment, regional collaboration for the communities. It needs to be linked up to wastewater treatment systems, and then just to consider those alternate wastewater treatment systems that will enable underserved communities where we're in the GSAs to actually have repurpose or reuse of our water to make sure we have the capacity to serve our populations. So just bringing that out as something that we need to consider as we move forward with the needs assessment and go into the next phase of this process.
Thank you for that comment. I definitely agree.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. Okay, the public forum. If you're a person at the meeting and wish to speak but have not submitted a speaker card, please fill out the blue card at the reception table and give it to a staff member. If you're on the Zoom platform and have not already registered but would like to speak during public forum, please raise your hand now. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to speak on any topic that is not on the agenda?
We have Kim Burns on the line from E&J Gallo, but she has indicated she'll raise her hand if she'd like to speak.
Okay,
We also have Tammy Humphrey representing the Northeastern California Water Association that wishes to comment, and she's online.
okay, thank you. Oh, and Bruce has a speaker card, he looks like.
Yes, I was going to announce Bruce
Oh,
after
okay, so,
Tammy.
okay. So Tammy, you have the floor if you're online.
Tammy, you can speak if you like.
Can you hear me?
We do.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Wonderful. Good morning, board and staff. My name is Tammy Humphrey. I'm the Administrative Executive for the Northeastern California Water Association. On behalf of NECWA Board and the irrigated landowners in the Upper Pitt River watershed, we would like to thank Nick, Adam, and Olivia for taking the time out of their busy schedules to visit our watershed. In the Upper Pitt River watershed, irrigated forage crops, including pasture, grass hay, and alfalfa, are the dominant agriculture production types, encompassing approximately 90% of the watershed. Small acres of other crops exist. Decades of data do not show impact to water quality from irrigated agriculture in the Upper Pitt River watershed. In fact, continuous ground cover provided by most forage crops combined with best management practices in many cases can improve water quality and increase groundwater recharge. Nick, Adam, and Olivia recognize the unique characteristics of farming in the upper elevations, and especially how wild rice operations are a perennial grass crop, home to local habitat, and blend with the ecosystem. NECWA looks forward to being part of the panel that presents at your February 2025 meeting. We appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Just want to make a comment. Tammy, I wanted to express my gratitude to you and to the NECWA folks for that meeting that we had with myself and regional board staff. You had a lot of stakeholders attend, and that was very impactful and meaningful to me. So I know it's a busy time of year, and folks did show up, and we had a very robust conversation. And I look forward to the conversation, hopefully at the February board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. I'm glad that meeting went well. Okay.
Yes, we also have Bruce Hattishelt here.
Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Bruce Hattishelt, Northern California Water Association, which is a third-party representing Sacramento Valley, which goes from Solano all the way up to where Tammy lives. Tammy neglected to give you a weather report. It was 24 degrees this morning. So a year ago, several of you and board staff, state board, your state board representative, Nicole Morgan, and State Board staff did a tour up in the Fall River. It was a nicer day that day for sure. And you had an opportunity to hear from ranchers and producers. Dr. Ken Tate, who is the chair of the Rangeland Sciences Program at UC Davis, and our cooperative extension folks as well, who have been collecting really good data and information, in addition to the water quality results that Tammy mentioned that we have for 15 years, really looking at the practices that are protective of water quality, which are essential to that. And as Vice Chair Avdis mentioned earlier this month, and as Tammy mentioned earlier this month, we had an opportunity to complete the tour by going to the eastern end of the valley to go see wild rice operations in the Alturas ranches and see how those ecosystems function as habitat and integrate with water out there. So as Tammy mentioned, we super appreciate that. Okay, I think that works. But we very much appreciate the time and the commitment of the Assistant Executive Officer, Adam Lapitz, our new Sacramento Valley liaison, Olivia Matthews, who took copious notes and was just attentive, both on September 30th and on October 1st. And as Tammy mentioned, along with the information that's in our reduced monitoring management practice verification on pesticides, on practices, on fate and transport, various things that's put together to justify the reduced monitoring management practices verification. And the science there and the data there. We look very much look forward to the informational item that is scheduled to come before you in February 2025. And we believe will provide the justification for an action that you've done in Goose Lake and the Upper Feather River. So again, much appreciation for their time and commitment, especially Vice Chair Avdis, who drove up and drove back, which I've done, and is cell phone coverage is not the greatest, so you can't be super efficient once you get to a certain part of that trip. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I think that concludes the public forum. Moving on to the executive officer's report. This is an information item. Prior to each meeting, the executive officer works with the board clerk and the board's program managers to compile a report on the status of the board's programs, its staffing, and many different initiatives the board is working on. If you're a person in the meeting and wish to speak again, but have not submitted a speaker card, please fill out a blue card at the reception table and give it to the staff member. If you're on the Zoom platform and wish to speak but have not registered, please raise your hand now. At this time, the executive officer is available to take questions on this report. And turn it over to Patrick.
No, I first really want to extend my thanks to JJ for helping set up the tour yesterday, to US EPA, who has really advanced the cleanup and done so in a way that attempts to honor and be cognizant of all the tribal issues in the Clear Lake watershed. Clear Lake truly is a unique place in California. It is, most lakes maybe last a few thousand years, right? Get filled in by sediment. Clear Lake is truly extraordinary because it may be dated between 1.8 million and 3 million years old. So when the tribal groups say that they've lived here since time immemorial, it truly is kind of beyond the scope of human imagination how long they've lived in that area. It has to do with the unique geological properties. Essentially, it's getting filled in with sediment at the same rate that it's sinking geologically. So it never quite fills in all the way. It's lasted through numerous ice ages. It is older than the Yosemite Valley. So truly an exceptional place in California. And because of that, the tribes have said that their history dates back to the first inhabitants of North America. That's part of their origin story is that they go back potentially 23,000 years to very, very first settlement in North America. And because of that, every kind of a patch of earth is infused with their tribal heritage in that area. So being able to conduct a cleanup on a Superfund site is truly an extraordinary venture, because everywhere you look, you have California's history intertwined with the history of Native peoples in that area. And it is not a happy history in many respects. So I really have to give a lot of credit to DTSC, US EPA, to our staff to try and look for a solution that honors that history while still advancing a cleanup of one of the most complicated mine sites in California. Sulphur Bank has been operating since the 1850s, closed operations in about 57 or 1957, and has presented a huge water quality problem to the lake ever since then. So we had a wonderful time having a very, very at times emotional conversation with both the cleanup personnel and tribal representatives out at the site. Very, very complicated history, very complicated cleanup. But I think the most recent infusion of money from IRA, it really will help move the ball forward and try and heal this landscape. And heal this landscape in a way that honors the tribal heritage out there. So really positive. Thank you, Elena, for coming out. Thank you to all the staff who made it possible, and to State Board staff that made it out there as well. I'd also like to note, and I'll talk a little bit more about it kind of at our internal conversation, but I'd like to honor Nicholas Savino. He was recently recognized as a hidden hero by the California Department of Natural Resources. He works in our 401 certifications program, and the 30 by 30 partnership is a key component of the governor's strategy towards environmental restoration across the state of California, essentially to preserve 30% of the state's land and coastal waters for natural habitat purposes. To do that, there's a lot of restoration activities that need to occur throughout the state of California. So at their most recent kind of 30 by 30 conference, there is what's called a Hidden Hero Award, where groups that are working towards conservation goals recognize a staff person who steps up and really helps behind the scenes to advance cleanup goals. Nick, working in the 401 certifications unit, was proposed, I believe it was Trout Unlimited, I think, or maybe Ducks Unlimited, proposed that he be recognized behind the scenes because he's so effective at getting their restoration goals met, getting their permits issued for huge swaths of wetlands restorations in Northern California. He was recognized at the conference. Board member Laurel Firestone presented the award, and in front of the top brass at the California Natural Resources Agency. So I'd like to kind of relay that to you as well, that one of our staff being recognized in such a way, really special, because he's not a guy who asked for recognition. He's not necessarily somebody who's appeared before the board, but works tirelessly behind the scene, looking for creative solutions that are protective of water quality and advance wetlands restoration goals. So, really giving a shout out to Nick again for that. I'm sure he's not a guy who asked for recognition, but is doing tremendous work behind the scenes. And with that, I'll kind of open to any questions on the executive officer's report.
Apparently none. Okay.
I have one quick question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Patrick, this is on page 17, the request to produce wastewater for dust control, where the staff reviewed Kern County's RWD was not complete. What's the status?
So some oil field wastewater has been used for dust control in oil field areas. I think what we're still working on, making sure that oil field water to be used on this particular facility at the current front oil field essentially does not pose a risk to water quality in that area. These are largely areas where you're essentially using salty water to hold down the dust. Environmentally, that's really what you want to be doing. You do not want to be using fresh potable water for that purpose, especially in Kern County, where fresh potable water has many uses for communities and for agriculture. And so this is actually a good water to be used for that purpose, but we want to make sure that there aren't any residual contaminants that could potentially run off or create water quality issues. I think it's in the phase where they're asking for additional characterization of that water before giving the green light to use it in that way.
Okay, I appreciate that comment because I do remember a couple of years ago, a few years back, there were concerns by residents of the water in that area. So I just wanted to know that there was not going to be any impact, but I appreciate the update and that is still under review.
Certainly, certainly.
Thanks, Patrick. And it was refreshing to hear about the Hidden Hero Award. What was Nick's last name?
Savino.
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 Yeah, that's always good to hear about. So thank you for that. Mindy, has anybody submitted a request to comment on this item?
No commenters.
Okay. Any further questions or comments from board members? Hearing none. Move ahead to agenda item 7, which is approval of the minutes. Are there any edits or corrections to the August 23rd, 2024 minutes?
Approval of minutes.
Yeah, hearing none. We've got a motion to approve the minutes from Nick. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Elena has seconded. Mindy, could you call the roll, please?
Board Member Yang,
Yes.
Board Member Kadara,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
Board Member Baggett.
Aye.
Vice Chair Abdus.
Yes.
And Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. The uncontested calendar, this is the time and the place for a public hearing to consider uncontested items 12 through 16. If you're in person at the meeting and wish to speak but have not submitted a speaker card, please fill one out at the reception table and give it to the staff member. If you're on the Zoom platform and wish to speak but have not registered, please raise your hand now. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to comment on any of the
Chair,
uncontested
Chair,
items?
hold on.
Yes.
Sorry to
I'm sorry.
interrupt, but we're adding 10 and 11 as well to the
Oh, I'm
consent
sorry.
calendar.
Right.
And I do believe we have some late changes. So just want to make sure that that's all included.
Right. Yeah, agenda item 10 was the Rio Vista wastewater treatment facility. And 11 was City of Yuba City, right?
Yes,
Thank you.
we have late revisions for both items 10 and 11. Like you said, the City of Rio Vista and 13C, correct. I was going to take the two NPDS permits first. So 10 and 11, City of Rio Vista Beach wastewater treatment facility, and the City of Yuba City wastewater treatment facility. The late revisions are primarily clarifications and fixing typos on those two permits.
Right.
Then we have one for 13C, also waste discharge requirements for green law development. Again, this was just fixing some mistakes in the permit.
Yeah, I saw those. I didn't see anything significant in any of those revisions. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so we got the late revisions covered and council, there were no other legal issues besides those revisions. So can we get a motion and a second to approve uncontested items 10, 11, and 12 through 16, including the revisions?
I'll move the consent calendar with late revisions.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Mindy, please call the roll.
Board Member Yang,
Yes.
Board Member Kadara,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Aye.
Board Member Baggett,
Aye.
Vice Chair Abdus,
Yes.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to have a compliance and enforcement program update. This is agenda item 9. We'll hear a status report on the regional board's compliance and enforcement program. It's an information item only and no action will be taken, although the board may ask questions and provide direction to staff. Following the staff presentation, interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board. Mindy, are there any interested persons that are wishing to comment on this item yet?
No commenters.
Okay. All right, so we'll let them do their presentation.
Good morning, Chair Bradford, members of the board. This is Carrie Holmes. I am here to present a status update. We do this annually for compliance and enforcement for the region. I'm the program manager, supervisor, and coordinator for compliance and enforcement. So the overview today, we're going to talk a little bit about the resources and organization across the 3 offices. Talk about 23-24 program accomplishments, 24-25 program goals. And then I have with me today Xuan Liu, Lowell Cottle, and Howard Hold. They are also going to give you short presentations about the programs that they oversee compliance and enforcement with here in the Rancho Cordova office. As you know, the Region 5 is the largest region in the state. There are 3 offices in Redding, Sacramento, and Fresno. We do have a vacancy in Fresno right now that I'm hoping to get filled that may assist quite a bit with some enforcement workload. Region 5 overall has about 311 personnel years. The compliance and enforcement across the 3 offices has 39 PYs. Of that, Redding has 4, Sacramento 20, and Fresno 15. These do not include the underground storage tank or site cleanup programs. In addition to staff at the region, we have support by Office of Enforcement at the state board. Each regional board has support with liaisons that are actually rotated every couple of years, which is great. So right now we have David Boyers as the OE Assistant Chief Counsel. He's our main liaison. And then we have Kaylin Ellison. Brand new is Perry Ellerts, and I see that I made a mistake. He's an attorney 1, brand new. And then Heather Didkoff, attorney 3. They also have the special investigations unit that they are a great support to all the regions. They help out with certain types of inspections for sanitary sewer, pretreatment, and some other things that we just need support with technically. They actually have been more and more involved, more engaged, and reaching out to the regions, asking annually what support we would like. So that's been great. Here in Sacramento, as I mentioned, we're unique than the other 2 offices because we actually have a compliance and enforcement section. So of that section, I'm the supervisor. We have a senior specialist, ES, may recall his name, Rich Moll. He will be retiring here very soon. Look forward to some formal appreciation in front of the board for him. And then, as I mentioned, I've got Lowell, Xuan, and Howard here. that are going to talk a little bit about what their units do. And they're committed 100% to compliance and enforcement, which the other offices have staff that do permitting and enforcement and other activities. Enforcement tracking and prioritization. Region 5, the 3 offices try to coordinate and are working on consistency in mostly prioritizing our enforcement actions. Recently, I rolled out a new tracking spreadsheet that all programs are going to be updating their ongoing enforcement actions so that we can talk regularly about what the priorities are, what the resources are. Especially it comes down to a lot of times what OE attorneys are available to assist. Liaisons available to support enforcement actions. That's what I meant by the attorney help. We're going to look at, for prioritization, history of violations, water quality impacts, those types of things. Cal EnviroScreen data, looking at what the Cal EnviroScreen score is in certain communities will help us to also prioritize. We are currently using the 2017 enforcement policy. The new enforcement policy is slated for adoption by state board late this year or early next year. I put a link in here so that if you'd like to go directly to their website, they have a nice summary of what it is that they changed. I wouldn't say overall that there were very many major changes, except for they did implement hearing procedures. Complaints, inspections, and responses. So our staff respond to complaints related to water quality mostly daily. I have here every 2 months, we have about 40 to 100 complaints. I did it by every other month, 2 months, because we report to the EO report. And so that's what I look at is about every 2 months. Those complaints come in all different forms. We get them sometimes phone calls, sometimes emails, direct from OES, Emergency Services, and then also our Cal EPA complaint database. So our staff investigate and either close their cases, some do lead to enforcement, or we refer them to another local agency, and that's how we consider some of our complaints closed. Mostly it's not our jurisdiction, it's usually counties. Inspections, reports, notices of violation, additional enforcement, all basically come about after we get some complaints. So enforcement process and tools. We have a number of tools available to us. Some are informal, some are formal. And so I have kind of broken that out here. Our informal actions are staff enforcement letters, notices of violation, 13-60s, which ask for a report of waste discharge, 13-67, which we ask for technical reports. And then more formal enforcement has 13-308 orders for time schedules, cleanup and abatement orders, cease and desist, and administrative civil liability. So Region 5 tends to try to practice in the informal enforcement range. For the most part, we really want to work with the dischargers to get back into compliance. The most effective thing for water quality. We developed last year a notice of violation template. All the programs were using different templates. And one of the key components of this NOV template is that we have a table right up front that basically outlines what your violation was, a description, and the law, code, or order that was violated, so they could see very clearly, and it wasn't kind of mixed in text and easy to not see. It's been fairly well received. At first, I think a lot of programs were worried because change can be painful, but I think it's been going pretty well. So settlement components, when we issue administrative civil liabilities, the discharger can stipulate to paying the penalty to the cleanup and abatement account 100%. There's also other options that can offset some or all of that penalty. Compliance projects usually are small community publicly owned treatment works, and with this one, we're trying to let them apply the entire penalty to completing the issue that's causing usually ongoing violations. So small upgrades to their plants where they can. Supplemental environmental projects can suspend a portion of a penalty. And those projects are projects that were not anticipated already for the discharger. So they're kind of going above and beyond. Same with enhanced compliance actions. Inspections for last year, here are our targets and our totals. Major facilities, 89%, and minor facilities, 130. Those are for MPDS, mainly wastewater treatment facilities, but MPDS dischargers. You can see one's a little bit under, one's a little bit over. We, throughout the year, have decisions to make, and sometimes some of the minor facilities really need attention. So we got out to a couple more of those and less major. Land discharge, we've done really well this last year, 157%. Landfills and other like composting operations, 120s. Construction, industrial with stormwater, also completed our goals plus some. And then forest activities, basically 100%. Confined animals, 73%. I understand that they had some staffage shortages. A senior, I think, left, and maybe a couple other staff. So that's the reason for their shortfall. So for this year, here are our inspection targets. They look very similar to last year. I'm not seeing any major changes. Most of these targets are set within the compliance and enforcement section, but others are not, such as confined animals and timber harvest. So that was my pretty brief opening. If you want to ask questions now, you can. If you want to hold them till the end when all four of us have spoken, it's up to you.
Thank you. That was a great summary. I have a couple of real minor questions. You mentioned that the personnel years did not include the S program or the cleanup program. Why is that? Are they just funded separately, or?
Yeah, they're
complicated?
funded separately. And I think that's basically all, is they just have different funding.
I mean, one way of looking at it is that the UST program is almost entirely an enforcement action program itself, but it realistically it's not accounted for in the numbers just because it's a separate funding stream.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then you mentioned that when you looked at the complaints, you get 40 to 100 every 2 months or so. And one of the sources was OES. So do those complaints include like spill reports? Somebody drops 2 gallons into the water or whatever, that's included in there?
Yeah, we do have some thresholds, 2 gallons. I don't want to see that. We'd see too
Right.
many, but if it's 2 gallons of, oil or some other concentrated material, then they would have to report it.
Right, okay.
So yes, mostly sewage spills. Sometimes we get complaints from frustrated neighbors a lot of the time, that have done their own landscaping that has affected their neighbor. So those we refer back to the county, but we are always there to help.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And really good report on the inspection program. I mean, you guys were getting out and covering a lot of ground still, so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
I had a quick question. This is on the confined animal goals for 24-25. Will you be able to meet those goals this year, or is there gonna still be a staffing?
The expectation is we set goals so that we can meet them. We did lose a position in the first round of cuts, and we had a senior position that lay vacant for a long period of time while the state was on a hiring pause. One of those losses is permanent, but the senior position has recently been filled in the Fresno office, so they're getting up and running and trying to hit those targets this year.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Other questions? If not, I'll hand it over to Shwen. Can you sit there? You can sit there. That's fine.
Hello. Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My name is Xuan Luo. I'm a senior engineer overseeing the MPDS. Oops, let me do my slides first. My name is Xuan Luo. I'm a senior engineer overseeing the MPDS compliance enforcement for its activities and SB 901 program here in the Rancho Cordova office. In my team, I have 3 full-time engineers dedicated to the MPDS program, along with 1 engineer who contributes about 30% of his time to support it. I also have 3 engineering geologists in the team for its activities and SB 901 program, as well as 2 scientific aides. Many of them are here today. And I'm extremely proud of the work they do. Today, I will give you an overview of the 3 programs I oversee and highlight some of the work, some of the important work in the fiscal year 23 to 24. So the MPDS compliance enforcement program regulates point source discharge to surface waters. There are over 120 MPDS permittees in Region 5, and about 90 of them in Region 5 Sacramento. This program oversees wastewater treatment plants, industry facilities, fish hatcheries, mines, and more. We have 33 major facilities discharging more than 1 million gallons per day here in Region 5 Sacramento. Dischargers are required to self-monitor their discharges in accordance with their MPDS permits. My team reviews monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual reports, some of them containing over 1,000 data points within 6 months of submittal. So this is a lot of work. This process ensures compliance with the permit requirements, allow us to provide timely feedback to the dischargers, and helps identify violations to initiate the mandatory minimum penalty process. Effluent limit violations are subject to mandatory minimum penalties, MMPs. The Water Code mandates the assessment of MMPs for serious violations and for non-serious violations when more than 4 occurred within a 180-day period. There's no discretion regarding these penalties. Any violations of this nature must be assessed a minimum penalty of $3,000 per violation. The Water Code also defines a serious violation as any discharge that exceeds effluent limitation for Group 1 pollutant by 40% or more, or for a Group 2 pollutant by 20% or more. Group 1 pollutants include oxygen demand, solids, nutrients, oils and minerals, and some metals. Group 2 pollutants include inorganics, organics, and all other metals that are not in Group 1. Additionally, late self-monitoring reports that submitted more than 30 days late are also considered serious violations. All the other exceedance of effluent limitations that are not as serious are non-serious violations. In addition to MMP, we can also pursue discretionary enforcement for MPDS violations. But there were no significant violations for the past fiscal year. So instead, we focused on discretionary enforcement of sanitary sewer overflows, as raw sewage pose a significant threat to water quality. Sanitary sewer overflows are regulated under the State Board General Order. This order includes waste discharge requirements. It is not an MPDS permit and does not allow any discharge to surface water. In general, we issue administrative civil liability to Category 1 spills over 50,000 gallons. Category 1 spills are defined as spills of any volume reach surface water. Currently, we have 3 enforcement cases ongoing. Dischargers can settle penalties by making payments to the state cleanup and abatement account. Alternatively, they can propose various types of projects as Carrie mentioned earlier. For small communities with financial hardship, 100% of the penalty can be applied to compliance projects to correct the violations. The discharger can also spend 50% to a supplemental environmental project. This percentage can be greater for disadvantaged communities and environmental justice communities. Enhanced compliance action can also suspend a portion of the penalty for certain types of a project that enhance compliance efforts. Here's a breakdown of the penalties in the MPDS program here in the Rancho Cordova office for the past fiscal year. So with a total about $700,000, more than 50% applied to compliance projects. Substantial compliance is achieved through staff activities spending time in the field. For the past fiscal year, 26 compliance evaluation inspections are done. These types of inspections are required every 2 years for major facilities and every 5 years for the minor ones. In addition, we conducted 3 pre-treatment inspections, which typically focus on facilities with significant violations and with facilities have industry waste pass through their wastewater treatment system. With assistance of office enforcement, we have also done 1 sewer system audit with a facility, at a facility with major spills and reporting concerns. I wanted to note that the pre-treatment inspections and the sewer system audits are not typically done by the regional board. So kudos to my staff for getting these inspections done. Many facilities in our region are upgrading to enhance compliance and to increase treatment capacity in anticipation of city growth. So here are some highlights. City of Stockton Regional Wastewater Control Facility is finalizing major upgrades to their treatment system. These upgrades will make the treatment plant more efficient and will improve water quality in the San Joaquin River and eventually the Delta. Mountain House Wastewater Reclamation Facility has completed upgrade to the biological treatment and filtration system. This will increase treatment capacity and improve effluent quality. City of Manteca Wastewater Quality Control Facility is currently upgrading its primary and secondary treatment process at the North Penn to address nutrient loading issues and accommodate future city growth. The Forest Activity Program regulates commercial timberland management activities, including cutting timber, road construction and maintenance, field breaks, landings, and water crossings. Angela Wilson in the writing office is the program manager. Here in the Rancho office, I have 2 engineering geologists supporting this program. My team have conducted 51 inspections, including pre-project, active, and termination inspections. We provide support in development, new permit regulating U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management activities. My team works closely with multiple state and federal agencies to protect water quality during timber harvest activities. The SB 901 program regulates vegetation management activities related to utility infrastructure construction and maintenance. Here in the Rancho Cordova office is primary PG&E. Again, Angela is the program manager, and I have 1 engineering geologist supporting this program. My team supports the state board in the development and implementation of a new utility wildlife general order. We have conducted reconnaissance and compliance inspections along utility corridor. Post-fire inspections have been carried out for Caldor, Mosquito, Arrow, and site fires. Currently, we're coordinating inspections related to recent small-scale fires like Boyle Fire and the Bear Fire. This year, we're fortunate to have no major fires in the Sacramento region so far, and let's hope it stays this way. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions for me.
Hi, I have a quick question. When will the state board finalize the new utility wildfire general order?
The latest I heard is February 2025. But it could up to change.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just have a clarification and a question. So did you say that the whole water system upgrade in Stockton was 190 million?
Yes.
And then 50 million was toward the filtration system?
Oh, hold on. Let me go back. I think the 190 million is for City of Stockton. The 50 million is for Mountain House. That's for a different facility.
So you're saying that this upgrade is going to help the water quality. Can you go a little bit detail what type of material is going to filter to improve the water quality? Just curious.
Yeah, so I mean, these facilities, City of Stockton is in general, is in pretty good compliance. They're doing this mostly to, you know, in the anticipation of the city growth. So they have a wetland system that, you know, doing the biological treatment, but sometimes it doesn't work very well when the season changes. So they wanted to get rid of the wetland. Instead, they have, you know, more advanced treatment system to keep the system stable.
So and also in addition to this, City of Stockton, we recognized, boy, it must have been 10 years ago now, maybe a little more than 10 years ago, along with many of the other Delta plants, nutrient management was really essential to maintain Delta water quality. And we were having, a lot of concerns in our water conveyance facilities as water was pumped out of the Delta in the water project. As the water would slow down and be stored, you would get harmful algal blooms, and those were associated with higher nutrient levels. So Stockton, along with the Regional Sanitation District, which is another very, very large plant, were required by our permits to upgrade to what we call nitrification, denitrification treatment, where they can meet a very stringent standard for nitrogen of about 10 milligrams per liter nitrogen. That was one of the big reasons we required an upgrade for Stockton. In addition to what Schwinn is talking about, the plant at the time was also in very, very big need of a number of other upgrades also, just because of its age and in need of updating.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both for that. I was curious, and I probably have asked this question before, that a lot of the penalties go to the cleanup and abatement account. What is that account exactly, Patrick? I know you've explained it to me on the side before.
Yeah, no, the cleanup and abatement account is a separately appropriated fund where essentially all the penalty monies go. It does not fund staff, but rather is used to in a lot of different ways, essentially responding to emergencies. It's been used in the past to help provide drinking water for disadvantaged communities. It is a large pot of money continuously appropriated that goes to develop, kind of water solutions throughout the state.
Good, thank you. Always wondered about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
And Chair, I would just like to add, it depends on the discharger, whether they go into a whole project or not, or just pay to the cleanup and abatement account. It's a little bit easier to just cut a check if you have the funds. If they do these projects, not only do they have to manage them and follow up, but so do our staff.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Denise.
No, I just wanted to comment on that second presentation that was mentioned that we have not had any major fires this year, and hopefully it remains that way. And I mean, I'm just so happy to have that said, because since I've been on the board, the fires have been very, very serious over the years. So this is the first time I've seen that Reading has had a little bit of a reprieve from not having all of the major fires and all the disaster that goes along with that. So it's really good. That means the staff can focus on other things, and that's not a pressing issue where everybody has to come to bail out and deal with the fire. So that's all. I just want to comment on that.
I do recall there was a fire that I think it was the fourth largest ever in the state this year, though, that burned up toward Chico. What was the name of that one? Park Fire. So yeah, even though it didn't affect a lot of communities, I mean, we still lost some timber.
Yeah.
Thank you. Before we move on, I think we're all getting a little in need of a bio break. So maybe we take 10 minutes here and then continue the presentations. So let's say at 20 till 11, we'll come back. Thank you.
request.
On that note, yeah, we'll get back to the presentation from the compliance and enforcement folks.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. My name is Lowell Cottle. I am the Senior Environmental Scientist for the Compliance and Enforcement Unit for Stormwater and Cannabis. Today, I'm going to be covering the Industrial General Permit, Construction General Permit, and a little bit about the Cannabis Unit. We currently have 2 water resource control engineers, 2 environmental scientists, an engineering geologist, and 1 scientific aid position that is currently vacant. Let's start with an overview of our industrial sites. We currently have 1,758 sites, and that covers most of 22 counties. We do have an EPA requirement to inspect 10% of those sites annually, which we have pretty consistently exceeded. Much of that may be due to the number of complaints we receive. This is a brief outline of how we prioritize sites and select them to inspect. Complaints are always at the top of our list. We also rely on the Stormwater Multiple Application Report Tracking System known as SMARTS. This is a portal where dischargers upload required documents like annual reports, analytical lab results. It's also where we upload our inspections and violations and enforcement actions. Here we can also check on the status for their unsubmitted sampling reports, indicating that sites may not be sampling, and late annual reports. And we also check for sites that have exceedances and may be in level 1 or level 2. A facility will go into level 1 for exceeding the EPA benchmark for a required sampling constituent, and that's based on their average annual. The structure for compliance and enforcement is pretty basic. We have dischargers implement BMPs to comply, such as fiber rolls and filter fabric inserts around storm drains. This is a rather unique application of those BMPs here. I'm not really sure what they were trying to accomplish, but they were headed in the right direction. Stormwater samples are designed to monitor the effectiveness of the BMPs. The compliance standard that we go by is the best available technology that is economically achievable for the discharger and the best conventional pollutant control technology. When dischargers don't sample, the system tends to break down. The compliance loop is pretty straightforward. Dischargers sample if there's an exceedance and compliance is not attained. They move into level 1 for that exceedance, and they have to submit an exceedance response action, which is a plan notifying us what they're going to do to improve their site to reduce their pollutants in the stormwater discharge. Hopefully at that time, they'll improve their BMPs and come back into compliance. So an important point is that when we do our reviews in SMARTS and we look at their sampling, we look at their other reports, sometimes everything looks quite normal, but when we get on site, we find something like this. This was an auto dismantler that I inspected a couple years back. And when I got on site, I found the storm drain that the dischargers claimed they didn't know was there. There was a large pile of axles, just up gradient, leaking 90-weight gear oil right into the storm drain, plastic, metal, sediment. I did end up issuing a notice of violation here, and 30 days later, they did a great job of cleaning up the site and came back into compliance. These are more examples of sites that I inspected that everything looked good on paper. The top 2 pictures are from a brining operation out near Stockton. I got out there and found some very large oil spills all over the ground right next to this creek. The oil spill in the upper right of the upper left picture, they were actually conducting maintenance of their heavy equipment right on the ground. So all of that oil and grease was washing straight into the creek. After I issued a violation here, they immediately stopped conducting maintenance outside, moved that indoors, cleaned up the contaminated soil, installed BMPs along the creek, and I also had them add a sample collection location there. 2 of my staff were just out there a couple of weeks ago, and they said the site has made a lot of improvements to the site and they're back in compliance. So that was a win. This next site in the lower left is a marine terminal down in Stockton that ships grain. We got a complaint that they were discharging copper into the port of Stockton, and I thought that was rather strange. But when I got on site, I found 10,000 tons of loose copper ore. And as you can see, it's not very well contained. They were loading it into dump trucks, spilling it all over, driving it through the facility, and loading it onto ships. So yes, in fact, they were discharging copper into the port of Stockton. Just as a side note, copper in these concentrations is really highly toxic, and it's really become a global concern as one of the most hazardous materials for aquatic species. And having this in close proximity to the port of Stockton was a bad idea. After my site visit and a third party lawsuit, they decided that shipping copper ore as a side business was not a good idea. They did do a good job of cleaning up the site and coming back into compliance. This other site was a boat manufacturing facility that I inspected. I got on site and found several issues, this being one of them. These 55-gallon drums had marine paint, solvents, gel coat, spills on the ground, spills on the barrels, no secondary containment, no protection from stormwater. So again, after my site visit, they did a good job of cleaning up and coming back into compliance. But again, you never know what to expect. Even when everything looks good in our pre-inspection review, you find a lot of issues out there. Next thing I wanted to discuss was our non-filer effort in the Stanislaus County. Non-filer is an industrial business that operates under a federally regulated SIC code, which I'll explain in a minute, and does not have the required industrial stormwater permit. So the SIC code is a standard industrial classification. It's a 4-digit code that is used to categorize companies by the industries in which they operate. Companies are required to use them in certain government filings, such as our permit. And if their SIC code is federally regulated, they're going to require permit coverage, or they're going to have to demonstrate that they qualify for an exemption. This was all due to SB 205, Senate Bill 205, which requires a person applying to a city or county license for a new or renewed license to demonstrate enrollment in the NPDES stormwater permit requirement. Some people were getting around this requirement because not all counties and cities actually issue business licenses, and that was later amended by SB 891 to include instruments or permits equivalent to business license. So we got this list of 341 potential non-filers from the county. We went through and prioritized the list. And so far, the outcome, we determined 199 of them do not need coverage. 69 of the sites have since obtained IGP coverage with us. We still have 73 sites outstanding to be investigated. And we actually conducted 23 inspections at those 69 sites. So our construction stormwater, we currently have 1,832 active permitted sites, and we prioritize those much the same we do as industrial. Complaints are always at the top. With construction, we do get a lot more referrals from municipalities or counties, and we also do our smarts reviews. We have our inspections kind of broken up into cycles. Right now, we are in our pre-winter cycle, so we're looking at sites in a grading phase. We're looking at sites with 10 or more acres of disturbed soil, sites that are a higher risk to water quality, that is closer proximity to sensitive receiving water, steep slopes, erodible soils, and sites submitting a winterization plan, which I will explain in a couple slides. During the winter, we do a lot of rain event inspections. We may be sampling. We're looking at problematic sites, high-risk sites, and sites with previous violations issued. Summer and spring, we'll follow up on potential problematic sites for next winter. And we really try and cover as many counties as we can just to keep a field presence known and make contact at new sites. Our pre-winter inspection goals, we try and establish who the on-site contacts are. That's important because once it starts raining, it's really time critical, and emails and calls to the owner that's listed in SMARTS may actually take days to reach the on-site personnel. Once we make those contacts, we'll discuss what the project schedule is going to be. We'll try and get a sense of what phase the project will be going into winter, whether they plan on shutting down and stabilizing or working through the winter. We also try and assess whether the on-site personnel really understand the permit requirements or if they're actually going to be relying on a consultant to do their work for them. And this really gives us a good sense of what to expect at each particular site. This is also a good time for us to find potential discharge locations. And once we get on site during a rain event, we'll know where to go for photos and potential sampling. So the winterization plans is something that we request because it's not a permit requirement. It's something we have adopted from Caltrans. And I would like to give credit to Mike Fisher for implementing that. It's been very successful for us. And basically, it's a condensed version of the site's erosion control plan specific to what the project is going to look like going into winter. We'll typically ask for erosion control figures showing what parts of the project are scheduled to be active or inactive, what BMPs will be installed prior to the first rain event. We'll also request a schedule for implementing the BMPs and who is going to be implementing them. Last thing we request is if they're planning to retain stormwater on site, we'll ask for calculations showing how much stormwater they can hold and how they're going to dispose of the water prior to the next rain event. So requesting these plans really gets the project personnel thinking about how to protect the site for the upcoming winter. And it also lets them know that we're keeping an eye on them. The next thing I wanted to touch on is formal enforcement in the form of administrative civil liabilities. My involvement so far has only been with compressed ACLs, which are relatively short duration violations, but severe enough to warrant a penalty. They're also designed to settle quickly, and we only include violations that are indisputable, such as photographic evidence and maybe sometimes sample results. Full ACLs are longer term violations, maybe repeat offenders, recalcitrant dischargers. Full ACL can settle, but will likely be contested by a board hearing. And the full ACLs also include all alleged violations that were identified. Both steps use the enforcement policy to calculate the penalties. Full ACL may actually take years to finish. The Sonora bypass, Caltrans Sonora bypass, took over 2.5 years to settle that one. This last go round of construction ACLs that we did, we completed 7 from 1 year. So the 7 construction ACLs that we completed for the 21-22 were finished and submitted early in 2023. The total for all 7 of those was just over 300 staff hours based on staff cost estimate. Staff cost range for each one of those was between $6,600 to $8,500. The proposed penalty range for those was from $38,000 to $185,000. And the economic benefit range, which we usually expect to be lower than the penalty, was between $500,000 and $25,000. If, in a rare case, the economic benefit range is higher than the proposed penalty, we go with the economic benefit plus 10%. Most common violations that we see are what we see in this photo here. No erosion control BMPs on active areas during a rain event, and discharge without implementing the BAT-BCT. The settlement process is a multi-step process. We issue the settlement offer. We'll meet with the discharger to negotiate the penalty. That gets posted for a 30-day public comment period. And then that gets forwarded to our advisory team for review and presented to the executive officer for consideration. If that passes his muster, then we will mail that out via certified mail with an invoice and upload it to Smarts and hopefully get paid at that time. Our cannabis unit right now, one of our 2 full-time positions was swept during the last round of cuts. This was our enforcement position. The other position, which is permitting, has also been vacant since May due to staff on maternity leave. She's just getting back to work now, so we've been pretty short-staffed. Reading and Reading and State Board have been covering a lot of, very limited amount of inspections for us. It's pretty difficult. We have a very large territory. 5S also covers all the way down to Tehachapi on Region 6 boundary and all the way down to Region 4, the north boundary of Los Angeles region. So we start at about the I-80 corridor and south, and this is a very large area for one staff person to cover. So because of that, I've really had to decline nearly all the requests we get from law enforcement. The good news is we can support law enforcement with a desktop review now, and we can actually issue a notice of violation via Water Code 13260. And that's pretty easy to demonstrate. All we have to do is show that they're cultivating more than 6 plants. They're doing it without our permit, and there's a threat of a discharge or waste discharging activity. So with the 13260, we don't actually have to prove an actual discharge. We do have another water code that we can enforce. That's 13264. Those are for actual discharges, but if we don't get out on site, those are going to be a little bit more difficult to enforce. When we have law enforcement, we can issue these through the desktop review, desktop NOV, based on law enforcement inspection reports, and game warden inspection reports, but they're not always looking for the same thing that we're looking for when we're out on site. So their pictures don't always tell the story. We can issue one NOV of the 13260 per site. If we're on site, we could potentially issue multiple violations for the 13264. We have gotten some pretty good feedback from law enforcement saying that this is helpful to them with their prosecuting of these cases. So yeah, that concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any more questions.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just want to touch on the Stockton site that you mentioned about copper being dumped that was found. I'm just curiosity, is that reoccurring or just a one-time thing?
My understanding, and after doing the inspection there, it was reoccurring because they had been shipping that copper for a while, trying to make some money on the side. I'm not sure. It did come up in their sample results, and the third party got a hold of it and sued them. And we got involved prior to that. But the complaint, I believe, came from the third party. So it's really difficult to say how much they were discharging. Like I said, in this concentration, it can be pretty toxic. They were actually driving it through the facility across at least 2 drainage discharge locations in open top dump trucks, just kind of spilling around. So it was not good.
I would assume with this being recorded, I'm pretty sure they're pretty clear of what we expect them to do going forward, as you alluded to, that you went back and checked and everything's good.
Yes, yeah, they have since cleaned up the site. They did a really good job of it, and they are no longer going to ship any metal ores. They're sticking with grains. And their samples for the last reporting year have all been clean.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I have a quick question regarding that to follow up. Why is that happening? Aren't the workers not aware of the safety, environmental requirements and air quality requirements there too?
My guess is that the workers are not really aware of it. Otherwise, I imagine this could have potentially been caught earlier.
Yeah, I mean, but signing the paperwork that all of the discharges have to do to be in compliance, if they are not providing that information to their workers, that's kind of that, that to me, that's an issue if they are not informing their workers of what the requirements are to meet water quality standards. So I'm just throwing that out as, listening to what you're saying, that this has been happening and the workers are just spilling and making a mess, and no one is telling them that what they need to do. I'm talking about the owners of the industrial sites.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are required to do stormwater training. However, that doesn't always happen, but every time that we go out and do an inspection, we require that they demonstrate that they have done the training.
Okay, so that is happening now as a result of the cleanup and all of that.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And then just one last question, not a question, but a comment. It was good to know that the visual support for the violations with the cannabis sites are helpful, because without the support, with the one staff person, that really makes a difficult challenge for you. So like I said, the visual support, I'm glad that that's helpful for the work that one staff person is out there trying to cover all of that area. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell. I had one. I know we've had some interaction with Caltrans in the past. You mentioned that Sonora bypass. There's so much construction going on now. As everybody knows, when you get on a highway around here, it's being expanded or widened or whatever. Is the relationship, is Caltrans on this now? Are they on top of their game in terms of stormwater?
They have come a long ways. And I can say that since I worked as a consultant for 16 years before coming to the board, and most of that was on Caltrans projects. Right now, I would turn that over to Mike or Jorge to give you an update on Caltrans if you wanted any more specific details.
I will say that we had some complaints at the maintenance stations on highways 50 and 80, I believe.
20 also.
Also 20. And so our staff here have been working with those maintenance stations to ensure they're using proper BMPs and doing sampling to ensure it's not getting into obviously the creeks and rivers that are adjacent to these maintenance stations. And Mike, if you have anything.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Fisher. I'm staff for the regional board here in the construction, stormwater, and MPDS unit. I deal with Caltrans quite a bit. I'd say they are a lot better than they used to be. It all comes down to the district. Just like we have different regional boards, Caltrans has different districts, and District 3 is the one we mainly deal with. And they have a really strong program where they go out monthly with their consultants and they do reviews of their sites. It's not uncommon to find deficiencies, but they address them, relatively quickly. And we've had a few issues here and there, but nothing like Sonora. They've been a lot better.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
I'll also add that Caltrans apportioned part of its SB1 funding, which was the huge funding bump for lots of repair and of existing highways and expansion of other highways. We have a Caltrans liaison here at the regional board. There's others that Caltrans funds to help, not only expedite permits, because we don't want to be the roadblock that keeps the roads from being rebuilt, but also to try and keep Caltrans projects in environmental compliance. They're a huge organization, and again, there's going to be problems with with an organization that big. But, from my perspective too, I think they've come a long way. At least in the 20 years I've been seeing Caltrans projects, which is a good thing. They are often one of the state of California's kind of outward faces of kind of the construction projects that California funds. So they've come a long way, not perfect, but a lot of kudos to them for reforming some of their practices.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Lowell.
Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My name is Howard Hull. I am the Senior Engineering Geologist in the Non-15 and Title 27 Compliance Enforcement Unit here in the Rancho Cordova office. I have served this board for the last 25 years and the last 13 years as a senior. Today, I will provide the board with an overview of the different programs and tasks my unit successfully executes on a daily basis. To do that, I plan on providing you with a description of my team, how we operate, and provide some examples of our efforts. My team consists of 4 engineering geologists, 1 water resource control engineer, and a scientific aide. Of the technical staff, all are registered with the state of California. Combining my team's years of service, there's roughly 120 years of experience working for this board. As a unit, we are responsible for approximately 750 sites for both Title 27 and Non-15 programs. In addition, our unit has been assigned enforcement responsibility for the CV SALT program, complaint tracking, and responding to spills. Unlike other programs, the Non-15 and Title 27 dischargers have either individual requirements or are regulated under a general order, or they qualify for a waiver of requirements altogether. From the list on this slide, you can appreciate the variety of dischargers that we handle. We evaluate compliance for wastewater plants that discharge to land, landfills, composting operations, and food processors, to name a few. With the number and diversity of regulatory orders, communication with the discharger is the first step when evaluating compliance. My unit's focus is to help these dischargers remain in compliance with the requirements that the board has issued to their facility. Albeit with email, a phone call, meetings, these are all important tools to building relationships and understanding their goals and limitations. We find this is the easiest way to help the regulated community maintain compliance. However, violations do occur. When this happens, the best solution is to get the discharger to return to compliance as soon as possible, as well as determine the cause so it does not happen again. In our unit's toolbox, there are inspections, meetings with the dischargers, staff letters, and notice of violations, which are all considered informal enforcement and the first step of progressive enforcement that is outlined in the state enforcement policy. We spend most of our efforts using these informal tools because it is most efficient. As I stated earlier, each set of requirements, like WDRs, are different. The discharger's interpretation of those requirements may also be different. The best way to serve the regulated community is to perform inspections to create a common understanding of our expectations. Last year, our inspection target was increased, and yet we exceeded our target with over 110 inspections. For my unit, the additional inspections are the result of responding to complaints and spills. Our compliance inspections focus on matching the requirements issued to the facility to what we observe in the field. When we identify issues, we discuss our concerns with the discharger before leaving the site. We work with the dischargers to get a swift resolution to any observed violations. The management of wastewater and preventing spills is a challenge for our dischargers. While a water balance is submitted for review to receive a permit, what happens on the calculation sheet may not be what happens at the facility. The facility may have increased their flows without approval. Capacity may be lost due to the lack of maintenance of ponds. There may be extra water discharged into the plant from holes within their collection system. Perhaps there has been a growth of the municipality, which now produces more wastewater. And finally, more intense rainfall events attributed to climate change all contribute to capacity issues. We do our best to have the discharger fix what is in their control. In this example, we followed up on a complaint that during the 2022-23 wet season, the spray fields at the facility were overtopped their berms, and treated wastewater flowed directly into Little Indian Creek, a tributary of the Cosumnes River. Upon arrival, it was apparent that percolation was not happening, but what was the cause of lack of capacity? After investigating the issue, the wastewater plant operator explained that the spray field soil was overcompacted during construction, such that the percolation rate in the submitted water balance was not accurate. A notice of violation was issued, and as a result, the discharger reworked the land application field to promote percolation. Here is an example of a wastewater facility with zero capacity. There are 8 ponds at this facility, and the waste discharge requirements require 2 feet of freeboard to assure there is capacity for winter storms. As you can see, there is no available storage. It appears that deferred maintenance of the clarifier allowed solids to be discharged into the ponds. The introduction of solids may have contributed to the poor percolation, thus they have lost their ability to dispose of wastewater. These ponds no longer percolate at the rate that was evaluated during the permitting effort. In the picture on the right, the wastewater has crested the internal berms. A cleanup and abatement order was recently issued that requires the discharger to implement their spill prevention plan which includes bringing in additional storage tanks as well as off-haul to other wastewater facilities to prevent any additional spills. Also, as a result of the formal enforcement action, the city has filed a planning grant with the State Water Board's Division of Financial Assurance to help begin the process of upgrading their plant. At this composting facility, their surface impoundment has an 18-inch overflow pipe set at 2 feet. Rather than pump the excess liquid into storage tanks for reuse in the compost operation like many facilities, or off-haul the extra liquids, they simply let it spill out. They were issued a notice of violation in 2019. Compliance and enforcement staff work with the discharger to decrease the winter footprint of the operation to reduce the volume of leachate flowing into the pond. The discharger has been working with our permitting unit to address the capacity issue. The plan is to rescind their current WDRs and enroll them under the State Water Board's compost general order. A notice of applicability has yet to be issued. Over application of wastewater to land application areas at food processors is a common violation. The waste discharge requirements for these facilities require even application of wastewater. Ponded food processor water is high in salts and BOD. If this occurs, there's potential for impacts to groundwater as well as the generation of nuisance conditions. In this instance, a notice of violation was issued. As a result, the discharger improved the quality of the discharger by additional filtering of the solids, as well as improving how the wastewater was applied to the fields. Even if the plant is doing everything correctly, plant upsets do occur. Many times nuisance conditions like odors become a problem. In this example, we had received numerous complaints from a trailer park marked by the yellow arrows that sit adjacent to a wastewater pond. To address the odor generation issue, compliance and enforcement staff had multiple meetings and facility inspections with the discharger, as well as we met with the neighbors to better understand their concerns. A cleanup and abatement order was issued to investigate the source of the odors. The discharger was very confident that the drop in the wastewater's pH created the nuisance conditions. As a result, the discharger increased aeration of the ponds and added pH treatment to stabilize the wastewater pH level. As a result, the frequency of complaints has dropped significantly. New WDRs were issued in June 2023 that require additional investigation of the impacts to groundwater. Unlike the examples I have shared in the previous slides, groundwater impacts require review of monitoring reports. For non-15 and Title 27, the most common monitoring violations include failing to submit the report, delinquent reports, failing to include the required information outlined in the monitoring reporting program, discharging outside the limits of the permits, discharging above the permitted flow limit, or even discharging hazardous waste are just a few examples of violations that my unit discovers during review of monitoring reports. The photo on the left provides a view of the north, looking north from the top of a landfill. In the picture, there is a EJ community to the west, the California Department of Corrections youth facility and medical facility to the north, and directly to the east, there's additional homes. The image on the right is what's in the monitoring report. It shows the groundwater plume has migrated north away from the landfill. The plume extends at least 1 mile north of the facility. There have been multiple enforcement orders issued to this discharger, and we are trying to get them into compliance with the current cleanup and abatement order. The point of these slides is you have to do both the inspections as well as the monitoring report review to understand. If you're just looking at the map, you may not see the EJ communities. You may not understand who's impacted by these plumes. The newest program we have been asked to do compliance work on is CV salts. In May 2018, the board adopted the resolution to incorporate the salt and nitrate control programs into the basin plan. Once incorporated into the plan, the regional board issued letters titled the Nitrate Control Program Notice to Comply to all permittees in Priority 1 basins. My unit took on the task of contacting dischargers who failed to enroll in the program. My staff reached out to dischargers who were on a list provided by the CV Salts team and explained to each of these facilities the liability that each of them were exposed to for not enrolling in the program. Even after those efforts, there were still a few that failed to enroll. Last month, as part of progressive enforcement, notice of violations were sent out to dischargers that were not compliant. We included a revised exposed penalty in the notice of violations, and immediately we received calls from the discharger asking how to comply. There are still more on the list, and we plan on sending another round of notice of violations out shortly. In addition to our work with the nitrate program, we are also following up on non-compliant dischargers with the salt control program. We plan on following the same sequence of enforcement actions for that program. Compliance work is not always glamorous. My unit also has been tasked with tracking complaints received through the Cal EPA complaint system, as well as complaints we receive from emails, phone calls, or other field staff. Once the complaint is received, there's a review to determine if it is the regional board's jurisdiction to respond. If the complaint is for the regional board, then it is forwarded onto the appropriate office and program staff. If it is not the regional board's issue, then the complaint is forwarded onto the appropriate agency like County Health Department or another state agency like Department of Fish and Wildlife. Mr. Guy Childs is a staff person I would like to recognize for his efforts to maintain the region's complaint database. He also directs the complaints to the appropriate staff or other agencies, as well as he prepares all the statistics for the executive officer's report. My unit also follows up on spills sent to us by Cal OES. State law requires that an unauthorized discharge of sewage into or onto state waters must be reported to Cal OES. Upon such notification, Cal OES will then immediately notify the regional board, the health department, and local environmental health. These offices are responsible for determining the appropriate response. Once that information is received, it is our jurisdiction, like a wastewater plant, to respond. We contact the dischargers. We try to get as much information about the spill. Depending on what they explain to us, we're usually in the car the next day going out to investigate the spills. And 7 days later, they're responsible to give us a report. And from them, we evaluate further enforcement actions. To summarize, my unit is the Swiss Army knife of this office. With the combined 120 years of serving this board with additional career years as consultants, my unit is well equipped to handle and address the multitude of discharges in our area of responsibility. We operate as a unit committed to protecting water quality, consistency with our messaging to the regulated community, and effectively implementing the board's policies, all while maintaining a respectful professional relationship with our dischargers. Most importantly, we reach out to those who are unfamiliar with our agency and help provide them with information to address their concerns they may have about a particular facility in our region. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Howard. You guys are the Swiss Army knife. That's a good analogy there, I think. Good graphic. I was going to ask a question about how you identified sites to inspect, but I think you answered that at the end of your presentation. So you get complaints, you get spill reports. Do you also have some of these facilities on a regular inspection schedule, or you don't have time for that with so many to deal with?
Each staff, they have a list of their problem sites. We try to, if they filed a spill report, it's definitely on the priority to inspect. If it's already under an enforcement order, we want to make sure they're getting back into compliance. So that also raises the concern. And then, like you said, complaints. That's going to lead us straight to the site for inspection. There was something that Denise Kadara asked about permitting, and with the stormwater, we see that a lot on our sites about many of the operators. When we show up, it's an education. We sit down with the permit and we go through the permit to make sure they understand what they're required to do. Many of them don't even know we exist, who we are. So it is a lot about outreach and education. Our WDRs require them to have a copy of the requirements on site. So that's usually the first question. Can I see the WDRs to see if they even know what it is and what they're responsible for?
Yeah, I guess that's not too surprising, given that the WDR can be put in place and then they have staff turnover and they don't take the time to train. I'm sure that's pretty common. So good presentation. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot to all of you, really. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just want to expand on what Mark asked there. So are you saying that if there's no complaint, then some of the site, it's not a requirement for us to inspect them, or was it clear on that?
No, we'll still, if we're in the area, we'll do 3 or 4 inspections in a day. We try to visit ones that haven't been visited in years to make sure that they're aware that we're still around. We still expect you to do your monitoring. We still expect you to submit your report. So that's the toughest thing. We have so many sites with, I have a small team trying to maximize our presence in the field.
Yeah, and I understand that we might not have all the resources. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, what is our minimum requirement as far as making sure that we're overseeing these sites, that there are compliance accordingly? Is there a minimum?
It's not quite like MPDS where you have major and minor facilities and there's a federal requirement we need to inspect on a certain schedule. That doesn't exist for these types of sites. And so the ones that bubble to the top generally are the problem sites they have. In the last couple of years, it's been centered around mostly disadvantaged communities that are in the area that might be affected by the plume and need drinking water. But there's no minimum requirement.
So what I heard is maybe the minimum is making sure that the site has the WR permits, that has kind of a layout of what the asking is. Is that what I'm hearing? That's the minimum requirement? And then when we close by, we'll inspect it?
We'll walk through the requirements when we're on site with them.
Right.
So we'll ask them to produce the waste discharge requirements or permit, whatever permit they're under. And again, we're there as a outreach.
Sure.
We ask them to walk us through their process. Let's see where the wastewater comes in, where does it go out, where are your wells? Again, it's just, we're not there with a hammer. We're there, let's get you into compliance if we see an issue.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick question in regards to those that are out of compliance. The example we talked about with the oil spill earlier. Is there any way that there could be a particular file or something to where when new workers come on board, they are walked through a process to understand what's needed as far as compliance, to where we don't wait until the workers haven't been informed, the spill happens. We have to come out and inspect and see the mess they made. Is there any way we could create something that, because it's on the discharger to be in compliance, what can we do to help connect that to where we don't see workers not being aware of what the requirements are and they need to be in compliance? I'm just asking the question.
That's a great question. And we're actually dealing with a site or a municipality that's kind of in that same situation. They've had a overturn of city managers, and this time with the recent turnover, we prepared a letter saying, here's all the orders that you're responsible for. We're happy to meet with you, because it was a new city manager. They had a new operator. We went out, we've already inspected the site 3 or 4 times to do just what you're asking, to make sure they understand the requirements before they get discharging out of compliance.
All right, thanks for sharing, because it just seems to me that the workers, they're not responsible if the owners of the site and the business, if they're not providing that information to their workers. So yeah, I'm, like I said, I was just asking the question, but I appreciate your answering that you guys are still trying to make sure that that's happening, because after the fact, that's a horrible mess to have to have. I heard make mention of the disadvantaged communities that are being impacted. We just don't want to see that happen at all. So anything we can do ahead of time to make sure that as the turnover happens with the workers, that those discharges are still responsible to ensure that their workers are doing the right thing. And not after the fact, after the inspections, we get complaints and have to go out and cite them. I think that just puts more of a burden on us, and the burden is really should be on the discharger to be in compliance.
Oh, absolutely. I will note that there are, literally hundreds of different types of permits that we have out there, and each one is tailored to a different circumstance. For example, some of the wastewater treatment plants, they have to have certain grades of operators based on sophistication of their system. Stormwater program has, qualified stormwater managers, depending on what type. And it shouldn't be the case where you get to a site and the workers don't know what the heck they're working with. That is usually, the folks in front of you, that's ringing some alarm bells. And usually that merits some additional follow-up. There's also cases in the past where we've worked with OSHA and other types of entities, air districts, when we come across constituents that are truly concerning and may not be big of a water quality threat, but maybe an air quality or a worker safety threat. So realistically, I'll let Carrie wrap up, but I'm glad you had Schwinn, Lowell, Howard here to talk to you about their program and the staff work that they do. It really does take, at least in my experience, a special type of personality to be involved in this enforcement program, particularly in the Central Valley. You have to have the right mix of technical expertise. You have to be a teacher sometimes. You have to be assertive in the right circumstances when people are, getting in your face saying you have no right to be here. And then conduct yourself with a high level of tact and professionalism. I think here at the Central Valley, we take enforcement seriously, and it's largely due to the teams that you see in front of you, as well as other teams in the Fresno and Redding office that also do similar type of inspection work. But really, thanks to all three of you for coming out and talking about your programs today. And I'll turn it back to Carrie, and we can wrap us up.
Yes, thank you guys very much for coming and talking about your programs. They know them more specifically better than I do. And then I just wanted to mention that I'm hoping next year to have some Redding and Fresno staff present from their personal experiences with programs that they do enforcement on. get into a little more detail maybe in Reading on cannabis and forest activities. So stay tuned for that. This year we had a little budget issue with travel, so that's why you get all Rancho all the time. But we definitely want to give credit to the other two offices that do a lot, and including Fresno with the oil fields, right? We don't have any of that type of work here. So that's what you'll see next year.
Yeah, great. Thanks again, Carrie, and all you guys. You really did a great job. Good overview. And yeah, next year we look forward to be back up in Reading in October, where we belong. And I think we'll be in Fresno in April. So look forward to that next year.
Yeah,
Thanks.
if I'd just like to come in and thank Carrie and the whole enforcement team for great presentations and the work that you do there. I know in the past couple of months, we've, been dealing with budgeted issues, but the staff in all three of the offices continue to do an exceptional job in trying to carry on the work with the limited staffing capacity. And we appreciate all the work that you do on behalf of the Regional Water Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on. I think we've already concluded the agenda item 10 and 11, which were moved to the consent calendar. So we will now adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back until December. Oh, wait.
Closed session first.
Oh, closed session, right.
I just need to announce that we will be discussing item Q in the closed session list, which is the dairy general order petition.
All right, thanks.
So we'll move to a different room and then we'll have to come back and officially adjourn afterwards.
I'd just like to say that it's 12:45 and we're adjourning this meeting. Thank you.